Before you begin telling your story, you're going to have to make certain decisions. You are going to have to decide who will tell your story and who can tell your story effectively. Is it going to be from the point of view of a first-person narrative, or is it going to be a third-person narrative? Or do you want to be all-knowing in your storytelling? You, as the author, are going to have to choose who tells your story and how they tell your story. In the book Literature, Structure, Sound, and Senses by Lawrence Perrine, he discusses in Chapter 5 the point of view. The primitive storyteller, unbothered by considerations of form, simply spun a tale. Once upon a time, he began, and proceeded to narrate the story to his listeners, describing the characters when necessary, telling what they thought and felt, as well as what they did, and interjecting comments and ideas of his own. Modern fiction writers are artistically more self-conscious. They realize that there are many ways of telling a story. They decide upon a method before they begin, and may even set up rules for themselves. Instead of telling the stories themselves, they may let one of the characters tell it. They may tell it by means of letters or diaries. They may confine themselves to recording the thoughts of one of the characters. With the growth of artistic consciousness, the question of point of view, of who tells the story, and therefore of how it gets told, has assumed a special importance. To determine the point of view of a story, we ask, who tells the story? And how much is this person allowed to know? And especially, to what extent does the author look inside the characters and report their thoughts and feelings? Though many variations and combinations are possible, the basic points of view are four, as followed. 1. Omniscient. 2. Limited omniscient. 3. First person. And 4. Objective. In the omniscient point of view, the story is told by the author using the third person, and his knowledge and prerogatives are unlimited. He is free to go wherever he wishes, to peer inside the minds and hearts of his characters at will and tell us what they are thinking or feeling. He, the author, can interpret their behavior, and he can comment, if he wishes, on the significance of the story he is telling. He knows all. He can tell us as much or as little as he pleases. The following version of Aesop's fable, The Ant and the Grasshopper, is told from the omniscient point of view. Notice that in it we are told not only what both characters do and say, but also what they think and feel. Also, that the author comments at the end on the significance of his story. Weary in every limb, the ant tugged over the snow a piece of corn he had stored up last summer. It would taste mighty good at dinner tonight. A grasshopper, cold and hungry, looked on. Finally, he could bear it no longer. Please, friend ant, may I have a bite of corn? What were you doing all summer? Asked the ant. He looked the grasshopper up and down. He knew its kind. I sang from dawn to dark, replied the grasshopper, happily unaware of what was coming next. Well, said the ant, hardly bothering to conceal his contempt, since you sang all summer, you can dance all winter. He who idles when he's young will have nothing when he's old. Stories told from the omniscient point of view may differ widely in the amount of omniscience the author allows himself. In the limited omniscient point of view, The author tells the story in the third person, but he tells it from the viewpoint of one character in the story. The author places himself at the elbow of this character, so to speak, and looks at the events of the story through his eyes and through his mind. He moves both inside and outside this character, but never leaves his perspective or his side. He tells us what this character sees and hears and what he thinks and feels. He possibly interprets the character's thoughts and behaviors. He knows everything about this character, more than the characters know about him. But he shows no knowledge of what other characters are thinking or feeling or doing. Here is the ant and the grasshopper told in the third person, from the point of view of the ant. Notice that this time we are told nothing of what the grasshopper thinks or feels. We see and hear and know of him only what the ant sees and hears and knows. Weary in every limb, the ant tugged over the snow a piece of corn he had stored up last summer. It would taste mighty good at dinner tonight. It was then that he noticed the grasshopper looking cold and pinched. "Please, friend ant, may I have a bite of your corn?" asked the grasshopper. He looked the grasshopper up and down. "What were you doing all last summer?" he asked. He knew its kind. "I sang from dawn till dark," replied the grasshopper. "Well," said the ant, hardly bothering to conceal his contempt, "since you sang all summer, you can dance all winter." In the first-person point of view, the author disappears into one of the characters, who tells the story in the first person. This character, again, may be either a major or a minor character, protagonist or observer, and it will make considerable difference whether the protagonist tells the story or someone else tells it. This time around, the ant and the grasshopper is told in the first person from the point of view of the grasshopper. Cold and hungry, I watched the ant tugging over the snow a piece of corn he had stored up last summer. My feelers twitched, and I was conscious of a tick in my left hind leg. Finally, I could bear it no longer. "Please, friend ant," I asked, "may I have a bite of your corn?" He looked me up and down. "What were you doing all last summer?" he asked, rather too smugly, it seemed to me. "I sang from dawn to dark," I said innocently, remembering the happy times. "Well," he said with a priggish sneer, "since you sang all summer, you can dance all winter." The last point of view, the objective point of view, is when the author disappears into a kind of roving sound camera. This camera can go anywhere, but can only record what is seen and heard. It cannot comment, interpret, or enter the character's mind. With this point of view, sometimes called the dramatic point of view, the reader is placed in the position of a spectator at a movie or a play. He sees what the characters do and hear, what they say, but can only infer what they think or feel and what they are like. The author is not there to explain. The purest example of a story told from the objective point of view would be one written entirely in dialogue. Here is the ant and the grasshopper told from the objective point of view. The ant tugged over the snow a piece of corn he had stored up last summer, perspiring in spite of the cold. A grasshopper, its feelers twitching, and with a tick in its left hind leg, looked on for some time. Finally, he asked, "Please, friend ant, may I have a bite of your corn?" The ant looked the grasshopper up and down. "What were you doing all last summer?" he snapped. "I sang from dawn till dark," replied the grasshopper, not changing his tone. "Since you sang all summer, you can dance all winter."